Hey guys, this is Greg with Fulfill.com. We're continuing our interview series with founders and leaders in the logistics industry. Today I have Paul Garcia, founder and CEO at ShiptQuick. So Paul, how you doing today, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. We're excited to have you. And I know I've talked to you a bunch about your company and how we have similar stories and backgrounds. And, I'd love to just have you share how you started ShipQuick, what sparked the idea, and tell us what led you to where you are today.
I feel like our story is a bit unique. We had a background in e-commerce. My wife and I, we started a brand about 4 or 5 years ago. For us, it was one of those things where we felt like in our brand, we were continually getting burned by people, whether it was long-term contracts or people just saying, they're going to do something and you never see it, or maybe promising an ROI and you don't see those numbers. So for us, we had this space. We have a 120,000 square foot facility, located here in the heart of the Midwest. We just felt like it was a very opportunistic time for us to start this business because we had the background in e-commerce and D2C. And so we could utilize that knowledge and know-how combined with the space that we have and really help other brands scale. The big thing is we just wanted to fulfill the simple promises that, we tell people we're going to do. It's getting your orders out in a timely manner. It's providing the best in class customer service and having a great tech stack for our customers.
Yeah, that's great. And where about in the Midwest are you actually located, by the way?
So we're about an hour and a half south of Chicago, about an hour and a half north of Indianapolis. We're in Indiana, a good area right off the interstate.
Yeah, and that's great. That centralized location is just great shipping times, I'm sure, across the whole United States. Great access to Canada, I'm sure, as well. One of the things that I see with brands is there's a lot of pain points that lead them to selecting a 3PL. And what's the most common pain point that you see brands struggle with before they come to you guys at ShipQuick?
I feel like a lot of the brands that we work with are brands that are typically like scaling up. And so a lot of them are coming from in-house. I think the big thing for them is just, getting the time back in their day. They're spending hours every week or hours every day fulfilling orders, sending it out. It's tough for them. Like they're spending a bunch of time doing that when really they could be spending the time back in their week doing what they do best, and that's growing and scaling their brand, right? So putting those hours back in marketing or sales, going to trade shows, whatever that is, leaving us to do the things that we're good at and letting them do the things that they're good at.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to do as a brand founder is, slap labels on packages and get them out the door because their time could obviously be used in so many better ways. That totally
Exactly.
rings true to so many brands out there. And, what are the top 2 to 3 often overlooked factors that brands should prioritize when they come to do a 3PL search? What are the things that they need to be asking these 3PLs to make sure they're finding the perfect partner that's a long-term partner?
I think the one of the biggest things is going to be obviously like the tech stack that the 3PL is using. I feel like a lot of times, brands aren't asking that. And I feel like that's something that really needs to be hit on. Like, hey, how many integrations can I have, right? Like, is there an extra charge for, these integrations? Are there any hidden fees? That's something that we try to make very transparent about as well, is that like for us, we just do month to month agreements. And so, we don't want to lock people into these long-term contracts. And so I feel like when people start seeing these hidden charges, they want to leave, then they're locked in. It's like, they don't want that. So asking about those hidden fees, anything like that that people may have, but also I feel like a big thing for us is customer service. So how quickly can they reach out to customer service? Is it a ticket they have to put in? Is it something where they can reach you on Slack or text or whatever? Typically for us, like I'm giving our customers, our cell phone numbers. We have a Slack communication channel again, but if it's something dire necessary, they can give us a call whenever they need. They're not putting in a ticket or anything like that.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'd say biggest two things for us are going to be, the communication and then also just the tech stack that you're
yeah.
using.
The last thing you want when there's a critical issue with your brand is not being able to get a hold of somebody at your fulfillment center who can help resolve the issue. So it's phenomenal to hear that ShipQuick has that in place and is thinking about that in the forefront of the experience. What are some key questions like a brand should ask to evaluate the tech stack? You said the tech stack is very important. What are some of the key questions that brands can ask about the tech stack to evaluate it and make sure it's a good fit for them?
I think this is going to vary depending on the brand size, right? Like obviously the bigger brands, they want, more of an API access. Does your tech stack have open API? Can you do that type of stuff? Or can you integrate with the laundry list of retailers that they work with or online marketplaces, right? Because most smaller brands are just utilizing Shopify and maybe a couple other things like TikTok Shop, maybe Fair, something like that. But as you get these bigger ones, they're using retailers like they're using Disco or some of these other these retail marketplaces that we need connections to, or they need an open API call. And I think those are very critical to ask in those early stages, because as you continue to grow and scale, like you don't want to have to switch because you're taking a step back when you're trying to grow your business, right? So I think that's something that needs to be asked regardless of the stage business you're in, but we just see more detailed questions from obviously the larger brands because they need it now.
Yeah, and I'm sure brands they have paths into sometimes retailers and things like that, and brands evaluating their own growth strategies and communicating that to a 3PL, I'm sure could be extremely helpful for you guys in evaluating their needs as well too. Sort of switching gears away from technology, there can be a focus on cultural values and values alignment between brands and their 3PL and making sure that those things align too. What sort of weight should a brand put towards, the cultural fit, the values alignment when searching for a 3PL partner?
Honestly, I think that should be probably the top priority, because you got to think about it. You're realistically going to be talking with these people on a weekly basis. You should have a partnership with someone that you could see yourself being friends with in the long term. A lot of our clients have become good friends of ours. They come visit the warehouse. Like sometimes we text just outside of work about random stuff, sports or whatever it is. I feel like with that relationships, it strengthens the relationship between the two, 3PL and the brand. And I think realistically, like, going into business with someone that you can't see being, a friend long term is probably not the best decision, because I feel like you have to get along. Like there has to be trust and rapport built. There has to be that mutual trust on both sides. And if you don't have that, it's hard to do that, especially for the business.
Agreed. And then moving on from that, a lot of brands require flexibility, customization, as their brands grow, as their product catalog grows and scales and they have different offerings, they're trying new products. What are smart ways for brands to assess the flexibilities in a 3PL and knowing that this 3PL can meet some of the flexibility needs that the brand might require?
I think that one of the biggest ways to do that, because what's tough is like every 3PL or every sales guy could say, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. Right. And so I think a good way to go about it is checking the boxes on some referrals. So that's something I always try to throw out is, hey, you can talk with 2, 3, 4, 5 of my clients and you can pick which ones you want to talk with and talk about, especially if it's flexibility. Like I'll definitely try to cater it to someone who has a very unique situation, and we have to be very like on top of communication and some of those flexible things that we can do for them. But I think talking to the brands themselves on and giving real case scenarios on like how we're helping those brands be flexible is probably some of the biggest areas that you could check on as a brand. And that's something we try to do is like, hey, just talk to them. Don't, because I can tell you whatever I want, right? But if you talk to the brand on how we're helping them and give real life case scenarios here, like that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I think that is a phenomenal suggestion is, talk with the other brands there and see how they've sort of dealt with similar situations and how they're dealing with a 3PL. And, every brand is going to have like a peak season. I'm actually talking to you during Prime Day right now. Q4 is coming up right behind that. How can a 3PL act as a growth catalyst for brands that want to scale, that want to go viral, that want to do 2x, 3x year over year? How can 3PLs like ShiptQuick step in and help them reach that level?
I think it kind of comes back to that one of those initial questions you asked about, like that collaborative approach and like being friends and making sure you're on the same page and you guys communicate well. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be a true partner, especially in the 3PL space, you're going to look for ways for that brand to save money. Because ultimately, if they can put that money back into marketing dollars or sales or whatever to drive the revenue up, like that's going to be a win-win on both sides. We always have said, if you grow, we grow. So if we can look at ways to help you reduce your costs, whether it's, hey, maybe you should look at building case packs for this item or something like that, because we can reduce the pack of it, the cost of it. Things like that, of a collaborative approach on our side that we're seeing on a day in and day out basis. And if we can send that to the brand and say, hey, look at doing these 3 or 4 things, and I think we can bring the cost down, let's say 5-10%, then you can take that 5-10% and put it back in your sales and marketing or whatever in your bottom line you want to put it towards. And then that way, you can help the brand scale.
Yeah, such a smart approach. I mean, I think there's a lot of 3PLs out there that just become transactional. Like, here's the order, we fill the order, we're going to bill it, versus the collaborative approach you guys are taking at ShiptQuick, where you're understanding their needs, sort of learning their growth strategies, and making sure that you're supporting that in the best possible ways for things like viral events or peak season. So it seems like Shipped Quick, would you say is overall like just collaboration is one of the core values that you really have in the company?
It definitely is, but I think that comes from our background of like having our own brand because we still have our own brand. We run it through the 3PL, we ship our own orders, etc. But I think it comes with that is because like we felt like people didn't do that for us, like they didn't go above and beyond. And we know how important these brands are to people. It's really like their babies, and there's a lot of trust that has to go into like handing it off to someone else, especially when you've been doing it yourself, before. And we just want to make sure that people feel safe, and feel like they can trust us with their brand. I mean, so we try to go the extra mile. If they don't want our advice, that's fine too, but we like to help brands grow and scale.
Awesome. And yeah, can you walk us through a success story? How did you help a client overcome a major fulfillment challenge or just achieve significant growth? If you can share a story, it can be anonymized, needed.
I would say probably the biggest piece that we've seen, or one of the brands that we've worked with the closest as far as helping them grow and scale, has been an apparel brand. So her brand's called Sky Dolls. She does a really good job of marketing. She actually focuses a lot on drops, so drop sales. So, she has a big influx of orders, typically once a month, maybe twice a month. So she has a lot of consistent orders too, but those drops are huge for her. One thing that we did and really stepped up, and we could ask her, we could bring her on the call, and I think she'd reiterate the same thing. But nowadays we take hourly calls on every Friday. We have an hour call where we go through and we look at her inventory, and we help her with like purchase orders and like creating new purchase orders for her manufacturers and things like that. So what we do, we've really looked at her sell through rates and her inventory and like what she's done, how much she has here in stock with us, and we've really helped her project like how much she's going to need to buy moving forward, which is not quote unquote our job, but at the end of the day, if we can help her forecast that more and be ready for Q4, especially those peak months when she's having those big drops, then for us, like, we're going to win in that situation too. Like, because last year during Q4, transparently, she couldn't get the inventory here in time, and both of us lost out on a lot, right? And so for us, we're like, hey, if we go that extra mile, put in that extra hour in a week, it's not like it's a ton of time out of our schedule, then we can go that extra mile. We can help her scale. We can help her grow. And ultimately, we're both winning in that situation.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And that's just the insights I think you can bring as a 3PL owner and logistics provider that is close to your brands, where you're seeing these things happen in real time. You're dissecting them after the fact and saying, hey, this is what we can do better next year so we can both be successful. And I think that feedback loop is just so important to have just with a good 3PL and a good brand owner. So it's good to see that operations like ShipQuick do incorporate that into their client platform. And, just sort of aligning with that too, like tell us about ShipQuick. What is your ideal customer? What specific types of businesses or challenges do you excel at handling?
We tend to stay away from like big bulky items, furniture, big electronics, things like that. The one thing that we've really learned to ship quick is when to say no. I don't want to say yes to everyone, because the biggest thing I don't want to do is be able to not fulfill a promise that I make to a brand. That's really why we started this company, was making sure that we could fulfill all those promises to a brand. And so for us, the biggest thing is really coming in and making sure we're, under promising and over delivering. That's the biggest thing for us. I want to make sure that, hey, if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. And so for us, we really like to stay with our ICP, our ideal customer. And that's typically going to be those brands who are scaling up, focusing a lot on D2C. We have brands that are really doing a lot of B2B as well, but we like to focus on the brands who are doing a ton of direct consumer. I'd say, most of their products are staying under that 5 pound range. Smaller than a basketball is what we like to say is, really who we focus on. But we do have a good mix of brands who are doing D2C and B2B. We love doing that as well. But the ones that we really shy away from are the ones that are doing, only B2B or only FBA fulfillment. Like, that's just not in our wheelhouse. That's not what we specialize in. And I want to make sure that we let brands know that up front, that, hey, this is what we specialize in. This is where we're best at. And so if you're looking for that, then great. We can be a great partner for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paul. It's great to catch up with you. As always, make sure you guys check out ShiptQuick, and we'll be sure to continue to film these videos and bring out more owners and operators and logistics experts in the community. Thanks again, Paul.
Appreciate it,
Yep, see ya.
Greg. Thanks.